Welcome to Wednesday Night Bible Study. Tonight is the second lesson in the book of James, starting in James chapter 1, verse 5. The scripture says, "But if any of you lacks wisdom, let him ask of God, who gives to all generously and without reproach, and it will be given to him. But he must ask in faith without any doubting. For the one who doubts is like the surf of the sea, driven and tossed by the wind. For that man ought not to expect that he will receive anything from the Lord, being a double-minded man, unstable in all his ways." God has always made sure to let us know that He expects us to have faith. It was an emphasis, and there has always been an emphasis in faith in both the New and the Old Testaments. Faith has always been a part of God's message to mankind. In Hebrews chapter 3, starting verse 18, the scripture says, "And to whom did he swear that they would not enter his rest, but to those who were disobedient? So we see that they were not able to enter because of unbelief." We are reminded of the Israelites that were not allowed to enter into the promised land because of their unbelief. And we see again in Hebrews chapter 3, verse 12, we are warned about our own hearts. In Hebrews 3:12, it says, "Take care, brethren, that there not be any one of you an evil, unbelieving heart that falls away from the living God." We are told of the importance of faith in Hebrews chapter 11, verse 6. It says, "And without faith it is impossible to please God. For he who comes to God must believe that He is, and that He is a rewarder of those who seek Him." You know, many times we have read in the New Testament that Jesus addressed even His own disciples of how little faith that they had. We read in Matthew chapter 14, verse 31. "Immediately Jesus stretched out His hand and took hold of him and said to him, 'You of little of faith, why did you doubt?'" And in other instances in the New Testament, Christ marveled at people who had great faith. We look in Matthew chapter 8, verse 10. It says, "Now when Jesus heard this, He marveled and said to those who were following, 'Truly I say to you, I have not found such great faith with anyone in Israel.'" Jesus also constantly rebuked people because of their unbelief. We see that in Matthew chapter 17, verse 17. Where it says, "And Jesus answered and said, 'You unbelieving and perverted generation, how long shall I be with you? How long shall I put up with you? Bring him here to me.'" However, Christ continually challenged people to strive for a greater faith. In Matthew chapter 21, verse 21, it says, "And Jesus answered and said to them, 'Truly I say to you, if you have faith and do not doubt, you will not only to do what was done to this fig tree, but even if you say to this mountain, be taken up and cast in the sea, it will happen.'" The greatest impact we see from the Bible concerning faith is found in Hebrews chapter 11. In the verses where James is talking, we see James dealing with the issue of doubt and faith, or an idea of active faith versus a dead faith. In these verses of study tonight, we see the doubting person has no faith in God. You see, looking at a man that is not convinced or not committed and have not committed themselves to the trust they should have in God. I've heard it said that someone who doubts has just enough religion to be miserable. A double-minded man is someone who is hesitant, who is indecisive, who has doubts about all the promises that God has given us. This kind of person has allowed doubt to creep in, making their prayers ineffective. They should not expect anything from God. The cure for waning faith is to ask God for wisdom, so that we may know the wisdom of God's way. We will face many trials and difficult circumstances in our lives. With that in mind, we need to ask God for help in both wisdom and in faith. In 1 Peter chapter 3, verse 15, it says, "But sanctify Christ as Lord in your hearts, always being ready to make a defense to everyone who asks you to give an account for the hope that is in you, yet with gentleness and reverence."